So, whatever it is you do, what is it you do? Some of you are students, and you have homework and tests and worksheets and study groups and whatever it is you do. Some of you raise soybeans and corn. Some of you play drums. Some of you play football. Whatever it is that you do, we do with all our heart. Which is really what Jesus is talking about today when we think about all our heart. Okay? I've entitled this message, Are We There Yet? Because that's exactly what Jesus says. Now, I don't have the picture that most of you as parents do. Let me paint this picture. You have to go on a trip with your littles. Remember when they were little? And we had to get, first off, if you're a grandparent, you have to take 3 to 6 hours, one adult serving of liquor, and a lot of patience to get the car seat in. Once you get the car seat in correctly, snapped in correctly, it's in there, then you can turn your attention to the tiny humans that are going in your van Friday evening to Meadville, Missouri for the wedding reception of Cousin Derek. Tiny humans, approach van, please. I don't want to go. Hop in the back. Make your chair click. Make it click, click, click. No, I don't want. Actually, they were really good Friday night. But I have had those seasons. How many parents have had those seasons where getting in and snapping a few buckles is a major undertaking? I want my blanket. I don't want to sit by her. I want the booster seat. I don't want the baby seat. So you get the chairs in, get the tiny humans in, then you get yourself in, and off we go. And pretty quickly into the trip, what do you hear? Are we there yet? Literally, I heard that Friday night a dozen times. Do you want me to pull this car over? But what helped was I have a GPS on my dash, and I plugged it in, and you could count the miles down. I said, watch that number. When that number gets smaller, that's how far we are from Grand's house. 56? Said, watch that number. It's going to get smaller. This was Micah. This was the oldest one in the bunch that was giving me the trouble. But once she started watching and concentrating on those numbers, I didn't hear any, are we there yet? Because she could figure it out herself. It's not unlike our journey with Jesus. We get started, we ask lots of questions. We don't understand. We don't know how exactly it works. We haven't figured out how God has gifted us, how He's made us. But pretty soon as we learn, as we focus, as we have an understanding that we didn't have before, we kind of get the idea that maybe we are getting closer. And it's just a matter of time. That's what happened to Jesus when this man approached him. Jesus has had, in its 12th chapter, several different groups of people come to him. Remember, the Pharisees came and they wanted to trap him. And last week we looked at the Sadducees, a different sect of Judaism. They wanted to trap him. Well, the Bible says in this story that we're going to go through today, there's another man that comes. He says he is a scribe or a teacher of the law. It appears in this interaction with Jesus that this person is sincerely interested in what he has to say. They're not trying to trap him. They do want an understanding. This man wants to understand Jesus' perspective. So it turns out differently. And the tone is different. So we're going to take it in a couple different steps, 3 short steps. And then we're going to try to make an application at the end about the journey that we're all on. Are we there yet? We have to know where we're going. Well, we're following Jesus. And ultimately, He has prepared a home in heaven for us. But in this meantime of following Jesus, do you feel frustrated? Brandon had an excellent example of how busy life can get. Are we there yet? Am I done yet? Am I good enough? Am I going to make it? And sometimes as we opened our service, we get tempted and we feel like, I can't. I'm not good enough. Let's see this interaction with this man, what Jesus has to say and how he kind of puts it together, and hopefully we can make an application. The New International Version of the Bible categorizes this chapter, or this portion of the chapter, as the greatest commandment. We're in chapter 12. That's on the screen. We'll read these verses in 3 sections, starting at verse 28. One of the teachers of the law, so he's different. He's got a different view of life, came and heard them debating. So he's in on the end of the prior argument where the Sadducees are trying to trap Jesus in who's married to this woman in heaven. He catches the end of that. He catches the animosity. He catches the conflict. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him. So this man came upon this argument, this conflict, and he's paying attention, and he notices that Jesus handles these guys. They came at him to trap him, to put him in his place. As an uneducated carpenter from Galilee, he didn't have the letters after his name like they do. He didn't have any status like they do. And yet Jesus handled them well. This man noticed that. So he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? So obviously you know that the nation of Israel had the 10 commandments from Moses, but there were other commandments in the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They would have had those scriptures, and there's plenty of commandments in there. In addition to the 10 commandments and the other commandments in the law, that's what they called it, the law, the Jewish religion had added 613 more man-made rules. So the whole mindset of this man and the Pharisees and the Sadducees was to keep the law, was to finish the checklist down to the last tiny little part of it. That's where their life was focused. That's where their eternity was focused. Keeping the law. Doing everything on the list. You can't cut 45 minutes short. You have got to do it all. So this myriad of requirements was heavy. And so when Jesus came along, teaching something completely different, he soon attracted thousands. The Pharisees and the Sadducees didn't like this. So they tried to trap him. And this man, caught in the middle, also comes to Jesus. And with this mindset of living the law, he asked Jesus a question. Now, a side note. We still try to live the law today. The average Joe on the street, if you were to ask them, how does a person get to heaven? And maybe even some of you in here today. How does a person get to heaven? Many times, the 10 Commandments come up. Well, obey God and what He said. I mean, He said, don't commit adultery, no lying, thou shalt not steal. That mindset still pervades our culture. It was very heavy in Jesus' day with the Jews. But it still is a part of what we deal with in our culture. Even cultural Christianity. People think, you may think, that at the end of your life, if your good works outweigh your bad works, then I get in. I get to heaven. Okay? Now, I'm a pretty good person. I mean, I try to live right. I try to do things right. That is a religious school of thought. Islam lives that way. Buddhists live that way. Lots of world religions, in fact, all of them, other than Christianity, are a works-based religion. I work in this life, if I'm a Hindu, and I try to live right, do the right things, treat people right, and I'm going to be reincarnated in my next life a little higher. I do that again, I'm going to be reincarnated a little higher. Now, if I mess up in this life, I might drop down 3 positions, and now I'm a butterfly, and I start over again. All the world religions are works-based. The Jews were concerned with the law. This man had all these laws in his head, and he comes to Jesus and he says, which is the greatest? The most important one, Jesus answered, is this. And he answers with something from Deuteronomy chapter 6, which if you have studied Judaism, or if you were maybe even raised with some Jewish teaching. I have a friend who grew up in Florida. She grew up on the East Coast somewhere. Her mother was Jewish and her father was Catholic. And during school, she went 1 year to the Jewish school and 1 year to the Catholic school. Then the Jewish school, then the Catholic school, then the Jewish. I've learned a lot from her. This is called the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's a preface. Whatever follows is prefaced, and that is called the Shema if you're Jewish. It's the teachings of God, the commandments of God. So Jesus starts from Deuteronomy chapter 6. He's going to this law. This man understands. He recognizes this. Okay, they all would have. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Now in Deuteronomy, there's only 3. Jesus added the 4th. And the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. This man may have expected a different answer. Have you gone to God sincerely asking a question, trying to figure out your situation? Maybe in grief, maybe in tears, maybe thinking, I can't do this anymore. You've honestly approached Jesus, not trying to trap him, not trying to trick him, sincerely wanting to know. And he surprises you with the answer. It's not what he was expecting. This guy, it's not what he was expecting. Love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Now, who in the room does that? See, when I read this, I don't know if that makes me feel better or not. All my heart, all my strength, all my soul, all my mind? Or am I distracted? Do I have other things on the list that tend to push quiet time with God out? See, Jesus is doing the same thing he has done for 3 years. He's raising the bar higher than this man can imagine. He had an idea. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not, bear false witness. do not commit adultery. Jesus takes those laws and he says, you have heard it said, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say to you, so there's the Old Testament law, do not commit adultery. Okay? But I say to you, a man who looks at a woman with lust in his heart has already done so. He raises the bar. That we commit adultery in our mind and heart. That's where it starts. You have heard it said, thou shalt not murder. But I say to you, if you hate somebody, it's the same thing. So when Jesus was asked, which is the greatest commandment, and he comes back and says, here, let's sum all these commandments up. Love God with all your heart. And it repeats it. If you go to the Greek and in the Hebrew, in the Old Testament, it says, it repeats it. It's like a rhythm. All your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And once again, not only have I broken all the 10 commandments, now I can't even keep the greatest commandment. And the second is like the first. Love your neighbor as much as you and the way you love yourself. Our society might say, YOLO, man, get yours. Fear of missing out. Get yours. You do you. But God is saying to us, there's a different way. And the greatest is loving God with all you are. So Jesus answered him and tells him this. All your heart, soul, mind, and strength. How does a person do that? We'll come back to that. Well said, teacher, the man replied. I find this interesting. The creator of the universe is standing in front of him. And he compliments Jesus on a good answer to his question. Whatever, it's fine. Well said, teacher, the man replied. You are right. Thank you. You are right in saying that God is one and there is no other but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding is the way he puts it, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. So now this man has moved into Jesus' teaching and he's saying, yes, that is more important than all these laws. To which Jesus replied, you are not far from the kingdom. This man understood something that the Pharisees didn't, and the Sadducees didn't. He understood that Jesus was bringing the kingdom to us. It was not a matter of a checklist or our good works outweighing our bad. It was not a matter of the law to get us to the kingdom. Jesus was bringing the kingdom to us. Many of us in this room have experienced that. We want to know God. We want to know about God. We want to know God, and we want to experience God. That the kingdom has somehow come into us. That we're different than before we had Christ. That's what Jesus is ushering in. And he's telling this man, you are so close. Are we there yet? You're so close. Think of a football game. Kicking team starts the game with kickoff. Receiving team, the kick returner backs up, catches the ball on the 1/2 yard line. That's where he's starting. He runs, maybe he gets to the 20, and you start from scrimmage there. The offensive team comes on the field. They methodically run, pass first. Run, pass, run first. Run first. They're marching down the field. Are we there yet? No. Run, pass, loss, quarterback got sacked. Pass first. And in eating up the 7 minutes of the first quarter, the offensive team finds themselves 4th and inches, 4th and goal, 4th and almost there. But what's the score? Still 0. Jesus is saying to this man, you have an understanding, and you're very, very close. But close doesn't count in the record books. And close doesn't count in the book of life. There were people that walked with Jesus for 3 years, that heard him say things that were of eternal consequence, that saw miracles happen. But when the time came, they got close, but they walked away. Are you there yet? Are you close? Are you closer than you were? Well, how do we do that when Jesus says the greatest thing is to love God with every molecule, every atom, every chemical, every element in your body? Everything that is not your physical body, your mind. What is your mind? What is your soul? What is our consciousness? What is that? He says you're to love God with all of that. I'm going to give us 3 ways to think about this. How do I love God? First of all, I would tell you that we trust him and obey. Before I can trust somebody, I have to kind of get to know them. I'm not going to trust a total stranger. I'm going to get to know them to see if they are worthy of my trust. Maybe some of you are in this phase of your life. You're going to love God by investigating, seeking him, learning of him, beginning to trust a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. There is a part that Jesus says we should become like children. I'm not going to trust a total stranger, but a 2-year-old might. Hey, you want to go with me? I've got some candy. A 2-year-old might. Jesus said, unless you change and become like a child, you will not see the kingdom of heaven. There's something about a child that is just trusts. We learn that as adults in our faith. What has happened in your life that has enabled you to see the promises fulfilled, evidence of God in your life? For some of you, it's a broken heart. For some of you, it's a tragedy. For some of you, it's an addiction. You're still fighting. And I'm telling you, if you're fighting, you're winning. It's when we stop fighting that things go bad. If you're fighting, you're winning. We follow God and we love God because we begin to trust. And as we trust, we can obey a little more. We trust a person in authority. You don't question orders in the military. You trust and you obey. You do it. That's one of the ways we love God. I trust you. Let me give you an example. 2 Timothy 2:22 says this. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, peace, and love from a pure heart. Okay? How do I love God? By obeying him. Here's an example. I've used this verse for 25 years, 30 years, especially with young men, but it's all of us. Flee the evil desires of youth. Now, what it doesn't mean is you have evil desires in your heart and your mind when you're young, and then when you get old, you get to be an adult, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. No, it means that's when it starts. Okay? You get it your whole life. Greed, evil sexual desires, power, and I want to push you down so I can rise up. All those are evil desires, and they start in our youth. Okay? The Bible says, flee the evil desires of youth. Now, here's what we want to do. We all want to know where the line is. Okay? For example, is it sinful to drink alcohol? Quiet in here. No, Jesus drank wine. No, it is not sinful to drink alcohol. But if you drink enough alcohol, you become intoxicated. That's sin. Okay? So somewhere between one sip and drunkenness, there is a line. State of Missouri says the line is 0.08. That's where they draw the line. Okay? We want to find out where that line is. We want to find out where the line is about greed. How much money do you have to make and save? I want to know where the line is because I don't want to be greedy. Where's that line? It's a matter of your heart. There are people that make $1 million a year, $1 million a month, and they're very generous. They are not greedy. There are people that make, $9 an hour, and they're greedy. It's a matter of the heart. That's what Jesus said. It's not the law. It's not the 10%. We want to know where the line is. Every young man I've ever had in a Bible study, when they start dating, when they find girls, when they're about, some of them 13, some of them 17, when they figure out that girls are different than boys, and I like girls, they want to know where the line is. Okay. If you go on a date and you hold her hand, Dom, you have a date, you hold that girl's hand, is that sin? He's saying yes. He's saying yes as his boyfriend's hugging him on the second row at church. Is that sin? I don't know. We want to know where the line is. And the answer, by the way, is maybe yes, maybe no. Depends on your intentions. If you're holding her hand and you have unpure intentions, that's sin. But you can hold a girl's hand and that not be sin. But we want to know where the line is. And here's why. We want to get as close to that line as we can without going over. But that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says to flee sin. It would be like going down I-70, 72 miles an hour, unless you're a rule keeper, then that's 68. I get it. I married a rule keeper. I know how that works. And you want to get as close to the guardrail as you can. I'm going to try to get within an inch or two of that guardrail. No, we don't do that. The guardrail is there with a space if you make an error. If 0.08 is the guardrail, flee. Don't even get close to 0.08. But we want to find out, just tell me when this becomes sin and I won't cross the line. We can have fairly good motives. That's like driving 70 miles an hour, trying to stay an inch away from the guardrail. The Bible says, flee sin. Move away from it. Don't get close to it. Don't put yourself in a place that if you miscalculate, you crash and destroy your life. And it can happen very quickly. That's obeying. The Bible says flee. Trust him and obey him. Okay? That's how we can love God. Trust what he says. Obey him. Invest time. If I'm going to love you, if I'm going to be close to you, we're going to be close friends, we have to have time together. You can be an acquaintance this way, but you won't be real friends. That's why COVID was so hard on many churches. There are churches that closed during COVID and will never reopen. They just could not overcome all that came along with it. And one of those things was not meeting in person. God made us relational beings. You don't do that via Zoom. It's a substitute, but it's a weak substitute. Schools are the same way. Now, we had to do that for a while. People were dying. We didn't know what we were up against. We didn't understand it. We have better understanding now, okay? But if I'm going to get to know you, eventually I would like to sit down with you and talk with you, especially when the hard times of life come and you're broken. And it may not be me. It may be someone else. You know, it doesn't have to be me, obviously. Invest time. Okay? That's the second one. But here's what Jesus said. How do you love God? Love others. If we don't love other people, especially our brothers and sisters in the church, in his body, we've missed the whole point. Love others. Now, the Bible also says it's easy to love those who love you. Jesus calls us to love people who are unlovable, quote, unlovable, difficult to deal with. He also says to love our enemies, those that hate you and persecute you. So this man comes to Jesus, and he wants to know the greatest thing. He wants to know where the line is. Are we there yet? Jesus says, you're really, really close. You're grasping something. Loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, is much greater than all the sacrificial systems and all the laws and commandments. This guy's really close. He says, love God with all that you are, and love others the same way. So how do we do that? Surrender. If I'm going to trust and obey Jesus, I'm going to have to put him in charge. Do you remember a day? Do you remember a time? Do you remember a season where you surrendered to God? Here's my words. February 27th, 1977. As I walked the aisle of that church, I said, I give up. I give up. I've tried this and this and this and this and this and this. And a lot of that was fun for a moment. Sin is fun for a moment. That's why it wouldn't be tempting if it wasn't. It's perverted, but it looks good. The apple looked good to Eve, and it looked good. The Bible says that. Looked good. But it was death. And I remember saying, I give up. I've tried all these other things, and they're all dead-end roads. There is nothing there. I think I'm going somewhere, and I pop over the hill, dead end. And it was all a waste. Have you ever surrendered your life? Now, it's not a checklist thing. It's not a once and done, but there is a beginning. And you're redeemed. You come to him. I give up. You're in charge. I'm not leading. I'm following. Number 2, seeking him. The Bible says, if you seek me and search for me with all your heart, I will be found by you. We want to know about God. We want to know God. And we want to experience him. Part of that happens on Sunday morning, but part of that is a small group. Taking the risk to be in a group of people maybe you don't know. Maybe it's a Bible study. Maybe it's serving the little old lady across the back fence who has had nothing but cranky words for you. She doesn't like you. She doesn't like your dog. She doesn't like your kids, your car. But she's lonely and she's hurting. And that's her only way of protecting herself. Are you able to see that? Do you ask God to give you eyes to see? When we seek him, he says, when you search for me with all your heart, I will be found by you. Have you ever surrendered? And then it's a daily thing. Take up your cross. Follow me. Do you seek him? A lot of ways to do that. And then do you serve him? That's the others part. Do you visit people? Do you take time for people? Just as Brandon said. By the way, next time I'm out of the pulpit, Brandon will be giving the sermon. He'll be having the message. He doesn't know that yet, but he will be. You auditioned today. It went really well, by the way. Jesus took time for people. And he served them. He said, if you want to be first, you're going to be last. But if you'll give your life away, you'll find it. And the way you do that is by serving others. How do we love God? Jesus says, love him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. How do we do that? Primarily, it's how we treat one another. Do you forgive? Or do you keep score? Let me ask husbands and wives. Do you keep score? Please don't keep score. Forgive. Love unconditionally. Serve. It's too heavy when we as brothers and sisters keep score on each other. That's the law. We are not under the law. We are under grace. That's why Jesus died on the cross. If we could accomplish it by the law, if this man could have done all those things in the law, Jesus would not have had to endure the cross. But he did. And his life in us gives us love. He is love, the Bible says. So think about this week. What's on your appointment this week? What games do you have? What appointments do you have? You got to go to the doctor, got to go to the grocery store, got to make a Sam's Club run. I'm going to see my aunt and uncle I haven't seen forever. We're going to go this place. What's on your agenda? What's on your calendar? How might God use you to love people that your paths will cross? And it's surprising sometimes. This man was looking for all he wanted to know was where the line was. And Jesus surprised him. God is love. And if we say that we love God and we don't love our brother and sister, the Bible says we're a liar. How will your paths cross?